Does it matter that you're the co-host and I'm the host?
Um,
Let me
I
see
don't
if I can
know.
make her. Oh, here we go. Make host. You're the host.
No, I'm the host. Hey, everybody, and we are live. Sorry for starting a little bit late. We had another webinar that was going on that ran over a little bit, but welcome, everybody. Now, let me just make sure. Normally, I would ask you all to put where you're from and how many listings you manage in the chat, but looks like the chat isn't enabled. So now the chat is enabled. So if you all want to drop in where you're joining from, that would be awesome. We do also have the Q&A enabled as well. As we are going through this, if y'all have any questions at all, please put those in the Q&A. It'll just make it a little bit easier for us to, sorry, getting a call. It'll just make it a little bit easier for us to keep track of questions versus feedback or comments or things like that. But yeah, we'll get started because we're a little bit late here. Thank you all so much for joining us on this Wednesday morning, afternoon, early, maybe early morning, depending on where you're from. My name is Becca. I lead the U.S. Solutions Consultants team here at PriceLabs in the U.S. I am based out of Charleston, South Carolina. I've been with the team for about almost 3 years now. I've also got Adam with me. He's going to be helping answer some of your questions as they come up. But today we are focusing on market dashboards. We do have a sister session to this tomorrow, same time, all about portfolio analytics. So if you're unsure about how to use that tool, how to get the most out of PriceLabs, do join that. And we can even drop a link in to give you an idea of how to sign up for it. But beautiful, let's get started. So today's agenda, we're going to start by just overall talking about what are market dashboards, talk a little bit about the cost, the features, capabilities, and also understand what the data sources are, because that's also super important. Then we'll get into actually using the market dashboards to gain a competitive edge and help improve your business, right? So market dashboards are this long report. It has a ton of data. We're going to break it down to look at a couple different use cases as to maybe instead of looking at the entire report, where you actually should focus your efforts, because it can be a little bit overwhelming if it's the first time that you're looking at it. And then finally, we will talk about how the dashboards and comp sets integrate into the other tools. Again, if you have any questions at all, just put them in the Q&A. That is what me and Adam are here for. And beautiful, looks like we've got people from all over Canada, UK, California. Hopefully it's not too early for you out there. Beautiful. So excited to have all of you with us today. So getting started, Barcelona, love it. Getting started, what are market dashboards? So market dashboards are personalized reports that provide vacation rental data from really anywhere in the world. We can help you identify demand trends, find out popular amenities, understand your competitors' pricing, and also help you analyze investment opportunities. We have 3 different tiers of dashboards. Depending on the size of the market that you want to analyze, that's sort of how you're going to choose which size dashboard you need. So the default is 1,000 listings at $9.99 per month. Then we also have 5,000 or 10,000 listings at $19.99 or $30.99. $39.99 respectively. Now, if you are in a more rural area, you probably don't need 10,000 listings. One thing that is nice is the comp set feature, and I will talk a little bit about that in a minute. But if you find that you are maybe analyzing multiple markets that are near each other, you can use the larger dashboards to sort of, instead of having 3,000 listing dashboards, you could have, one 10,000 listing dashboard and actually encompass a much larger area, and then actually carve out the submarkets using our comp set rule or feature. We'll get more into that later. Another thing about market dashboards is you don't need to subscribe to them every single month. You can turn it on and turn it off as needed. So I'll show you that once we're actually on the dashboard page. Actually, I'll show you that now. How about that? So to get to market dashboards, once you're in your PriceLabs account, you're going to navigate to this market research tab up here. Click on that and then you'll see market dashboards and it will load. Now, to create a new dashboard, very easy, enter an address, a little bit of information, the radius. This is in kilometers, so do keep that in mind if you're thinking miles. This is in kilometers. Um, so you can enter anywhere between zero point 0.1 and 50 kilometers. So sort of giving us an idea of what area we should be pulling listings in from. You do see on my page that we have an option for a minimum and maximum bedroom count. If this is something that you want on your dashboard, just email us and we can provide this for you. And then once you enter all that information, it'll take you to other pages. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we do have some videos on our YouTube channel that sort of go through step by step here. But hopefully this makes sense. So once you've created a dashboard, you'll see all of your dashboards on this page. Currently, I have all of mine refreshing. That means that we are pulling data, our new data in every single day. Now, if I want to unsubscribe, what will happen is I'll turn this off. Now, this dashboard will continue to refresh until, in my case, until April 1st of 2024. That's when my billing period ends. So if you know you're not going to want to access this dashboard or resubscribe to it next billing period, go ahead and turn it off. You'll still have access to it for the entire month. Now, these other ones might be ones that I'm actually, looking at more frequently, whereas this one might have been like a one-off or something that I want to look at quarterly. So I'm going to keep these turned on and refreshing. So I'm essentially subscribed to them. If at any point I want to upgrade from like a 1,000 or a 5,000 listing dashboard to a larger size, I can just click this button here and we'll be able to pull in more listings in that area. I can also always edit the radius of the dashboard for all of those listings that we're pulling in. The one thing that you cannot change is the initial address that you've put in to create that dashboard, so sort of the center point of the radius, if that makes sense. Now, data-wise, we are pulling from Airbnb and Vrbo. Now, we do separate these two data sources. When we're talking about comp sets, I'll show you how to view your Airbnb versus your Vrbo data. We do this for a couple of reasons. The main one being that we get different data from Airbnb than Vrbo. There are many of you that cross-list across the different OTAs, meaning you are on both Airbnb and Vrbo, but there are some operators in your market that likely only choose one or the other. There might even be operators that choose both, but actually have different pricing or minimum stay or different strategies for the different channels. So by separating out the two data sets, you actually get a little bit richer of data. You get to understand the differences between the OTAs. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, beautiful. So I like to start our webinars to talk a little bit about KPIs or key performance indicators. We're going to be talking about these throughout the session. So I always like to start with a good solid base, make sure that we are all on the same page for these KPIs. So if you have any questions, of course, I can answer them as we go, but right now is a really good time to make sure that we all understand what these KPIs are and why you would maybe use them. So first we have ADR, or average daily rate. This is looking at the average booked or the average price for booked nights within a certain period. So if you have, if you're looking at the month of March and you have 15 days booked, we're only going to look at the prices of those 15 days that received bookings. We're going to add up all of those dates, so $100, $120, and then divide that by the the total number of booked days. So that's essentially, it's just an average of the booked nights during a certain period. This is a really good KPI because it gives you an idea of the value of your bookings. If you are booking at a lower ADR versus last year or during this time of year versus during your summer or, depending on the market, it gives you a really good idea, again, of that value. But it's not sort of a complete KPI, right? Because you might book one day at $1,000, your ADR is going to be $1,000. but your occupancy might be very low at that rate. Which brings us to our next KPI of occupancy. Now, this is a percentage of booked nights out of a total time frame. So we're not looking at the value, we're just looking at whether it was booked or not. So again, it's not a complete KPI because you could have again, if we're looking at March, say you have 31 days booked in March, that would be 100% occupancy. But if you sold those nights at $5 each, your ADR is going to be 5, your occupancy might look really high, but the value of those nights is not really, you know, conveyed in this occupancy number. Or reverse, you might have only had that $1,000 night and you only had one night booked out of 31. That's going to be a very low occupancy percentage. But again, we're not capturing that ADR. So hopefully that makes sense. Of course, if y'all have questions, do let us know. But this brings us on to RevPAR. Now, RevPAR is a balance of ADR and occupancy. So encompassing both that value of the bookings and the occupancy percentage of how much your calendar is actually being filled. So to get RevPAR, you literally multiply your ADR by your occupancy, and it gives you a good, or at least a better idea of the actual value of those bookings, balancing both that occupancy and ADR number. Now, RevPAR stands for revenue per available room. This is something that we stole from the hotel industry, where you actually have, maybe 100 rooms that you're selling on any given night. You can think of this as maybe revenue per available night, RevPAN. Sometimes in the short-term rental industry, you will see RevPAN referred to. Or RevPAR, revenue per available rental. They kind of just switched the meaning there. But regardless, again, the main thing to think about with RevPAR is that it's balancing your ADR and your occupancy. Now, a lot of the times in this webinar, we'll get questions like, what should my RevPAR be? Like you might have a target occupancy number. I want to be 100% occupied. RevPAR is a little bit more nuanced than that. I would say, generally speaking, you always want to see your RevPAR increasing. You want to see your RevPAR increasing year over year or as time goes on, right? If you're looking at that month of March and it's, March 6th, we want to see the RevPAR for the month of March increase over time, meaning that you are either getting higher priced bookings or you are gaining more occupancy. Usually that's more so the case. We'll get into some more details about how to actually use RevPAR a little bit later on here. But if there's no questions, we'll move on to the next KPI, which is booking window. Booking window is how far in advance bookings are being made in your market or in your portfolio. So if we are, right now it's March 6th, if everybody in my market is thinking about summer break and they're booking for June and July, that time between today when I make the booking and when I check in, that is going to be my booking window. Now, this is a really good KPI to pay attention to because it can give you insight into how your strategies are performing relative to the market. If I am looking at my booking window and it's 14 days, so people are booking my homes with a 2 weeks notice, but then I look at the market and everybody in the market is actually booking with a 30-day booking window. If my booking window is much shorter than the market's, it might mean that either my stay restrictions are too strict or my prices are too high when the market's peak booking window is happening. And then I'm maybe having to drop my rates last minute to get some of those last minute bookings and fill my calendar. So booking window can give you a really good idea about your trends versus the market. On the other hand, if my booking window is like 60 days, whereas my market's booking window is like 30 days, that could mean that I'm selling too early. My prices might be too low compared to my competition. Awesome. Cool. So next is length of stay. Now, this is somewhat related to booking window. So we're looking at the reservations that are coming in for your market, and we are analyzing how long people are staying. Are people booking a week at a time? Are they booking 1 or 2 nights at a time? This can also give you a really good idea of how your minimum stays should be working for you. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And then finally, we have pacing. Now, pacing is not necessarily a standalone KPI like ADR, occupancy, RevPAR. You can't, I mean, technically, I guess you could say that you're like pacing 50% ahead. But normally there isn't really like a specific number for pacing. I would consider it more of a lens to view your other KPIs through, right? It's giving context to your ADR. So if you came to me, Becca, I've got an ADR of 100. Is that good or bad? I'd say, well, I don't know. I don't have any context about your listing, about your market or your bookings. How is that ADR pacing or your occupancy pacing against your performance in the previous year at the same time? How is the market pacing against itself? So basically, pacing is essentially a comparison between either your performance against the market against itself, or your performance against yourself during a different time period. And we'll get into examples of all of these in a little bit. But if there aren't any questions, we will move on. Sorry, I've got like a dog hair or something on my face. Beautiful. So using market dashboards to gain a competitive edge. So, um, as I mentioned before, we're going to go through 3 different use cases. Again, there's a ton of information in the report, but we want to break it down depending on sort of why you would want to look at the market dashboard. So we'll go through investors, new property managers or owners, and then operating property managers and owners. Now, keep in mind, what I'm going to tell investors to do, it does not mean that an operating property manager or owner can't also use these sections. You'll probably, as I'm explaining these things, understand like, oh, well, this is how maybe this would apply to me. But we do break it into these 3 use cases just to make it a little bit easier to understand because there is so much in these reports. So we'll get started with investors. So who is an investor? An investor is somebody who maybe does not have a home yet. They have a plan to either purchase a home, maybe they actually have a home that they're planning on making an offer on, but they want to learn a little bit more about the market before making that commitment. You want to understand what the trends look like before you sign up for a mortgage or anything like that. So let's hop into my market dashboard. So to view your market dashboard, you just click Show Dashboard. I have one that's preloaded here. Now, because this is the first time that we're looking at this, I'm going to pause. We'll come back to the investors in a section. I just want to show you a couple of key things. So the first is up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see where it says View Comp Sets. Now, we'll get into making comp sets in a little bit, but the first thing I want to show you is how to view the different data sets. By default, we're going to show you ABB whole market, but just below that is Verbo whole market. So right now I'm looking at Airbnb, but if I wanted to look at Verbo, I would select that and then click Apply Filter. The other important thing is this bedroom filter here. Right now, all of these KPIs, all of this whole report is being generated off of everything from 3 bedrooms to 10 bedrooms in this market. So if I'm looking at revenue or RevPAR or any of this, a 10 bedroom is going to have very different metrics than a 3 bedroom. So you want to keep that in mind. If you have there are ways to be even more specific than bedroom count, but at a minimum, I would use this bedroom filter to make sure that, these important KPIs that we're looking at are actually ringing true to what you are looking for. Cool. So back to investors. So if I'm an investor, the first thing I'm going to want to do is get more information on listings that are really specifically like the ones that I'm looking to invest in. And I'm going to do that by curating comp sets. So to do that, of course, we do have, again, that bedroom filter, but we want to be a little bit more specific. So I'm zooming in on the map. We've got sort of downtown New Orleans here. And maybe I know that I'm actually going to purchase something that is right in maybe the downtown, French Quarter area. So I'm going to use my lasso tool and I'm actually going to just look at everything sort of along the river here. I don't necessarily care about sort of the ones that are on the fringes or in other areas. I want to just look at these neighborhoods here. So now once I've selected this, I'm going to scroll down slightly and we'll see this comp set builder below. Now, the listings that I've selected using this lasso tool are automatically filtered in these lists here. I'm going to click Create New Comp Set. It looks like it's already actually selected there, so you might not have to click it anymore. You used to have to. And then I'm going to continue to sort of build that comp set, basically giving the report all of the data that I want to filter by. So I'm going to do that by clicking this filter listings button. It'll pop up here. I can say, actually, I only want to look at 3 and 4 bedrooms. Now, as I am adding listing or adding details to this filter, you'll notice the number of listings at the bottom are going to increase and decrease dependent on what I am filtering by. So a couple of key things that I personally like to filter by are star rating, number of reviews. So if I have at least like, we'll say like, 2 reviews, that's going to filter out some of those listings that have only been online for a little while, don't have reviews. We're all professionals here. We're going to get reviews for our listings. We're also going to maybe filter this. So I'm only seeing listings with good ratings. So more than, 4.1 stars, for example. I also like to filter by price. You'll notice that some listings in this market have a really high ADR. Sometimes people do that. They don't want to block their calendar on Airbnb and Vrbo, so they just put their prices at a really astronomically high rate so nobody books. I'll maybe bring this down to something a little bit more reasonable. We'll say uh, $2,000 a night. It still seems like pretty high for this market, but for a 3 or 4 bedroom, but we'll add that there. And you'll notice that has dropped the number of listings here. Minimum stay, if I am a midterm rental operator or investor, I might want to change this to only look at listings that have a 28-night minimum. Active nights, also very useful. As an investor, I'm not going to be living in this unit part-time. So I'm going to say I want this to be I want to only see listings that have at least 200 nights active. Same thing with revenue. Occupancy, I'll usually get rid of the bottom, maybe 10% and the top 10%, just to kind of clean up the data that we're looking at. We don't want to see any listings that kind of have funky information. We do have some amenities that you can choose from. Same thing, whether it's pet friendly or not, whether they're using dynamic pricing and various other things here. So I'll go ahead and click apply filter. Looks like I've got about 445 listings in my comp set. Now, if I had less than 400, if I only had, a couple pages of listings, I could then go through and even click on each of these listings to make sure that aesthetically these listings are similar to what I'm planning on maybe renovating my listing to looking like. If you see a listing that has, really poor pictures, that might not be a really good representation of what you want to do. But this looks pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all listings. Of course, you can go page by page and select them if you want, but I'm just going to select all. I will name it. I'll say 3 and 4 bedroom comp. I don't even need to put comp because I know. And then I'll click generate comp set. Confirm. And it'll take a second. Boom, it's been created. Now it's going to be in this little drop down. I've got this ABB 3 and 4 bedroom comp set. I'll click apply filter. And then this entire report is going to load with all of the data specifically from those listings that I have handpicked. I could then use this data to really inform me on the various aspects of this market and things that are, useful when I'm setting up my listing. So sometimes this takes a second to load, especially if I'm sharing my screen on a webinar. So I do apologize for the delay here. But does anybody have any questions so far? It looks like we do have maybe one. And I lost my Q&A screen. Let me see. Okay, it looks like, what are the most important KPIs that you would dial in on when diagnosing the health of a listing? I'm not quite sure. You may have asked this when we were actually talking about the KPIs. I'm not sure if you're asking that when we were doing the comp sets. Um, I would definitely look at RevPAR. I think RevPAR is very important. As I mentioned, I think an underlooked one, or I guess an overlooked one a lot, is underused, utilized, overlooked would be that length of stay and booking window. And I'll go into that when we're talking about operating managers. Again, if your booking window is significantly different than your market, then that could indicate that there are other problems going on, right? Your ADR, your listed rates might be too high during the market's booking window, or maybe they're too low, so you're booking really far in advance. But then the other one, again, of course, is your RevPAR, right? That balance between ADR and occupancy, because things might change, right? The market might be softer certain years. Your listing might change in ways like if you renovate and stuff. You always want to see that RevPAR improving over time. So I would say booking window and RevPAR are probably the two KPIs that I would pay most attention to. Awesome. So now I've got this 3 and 4 bedroom comp set selected here. So all of the data in this report now have to do specifically with those 3 and 4 bedrooms. So I can look at everything from the market summary to the cleaning fees, all of that good stuff, and it'll be specifically from those listings that I've handpicked. Now, if I'm an investor, a couple of the sections that I would look at are one, this market summary. I think this is really important to know sort of how markets change over time, right? If we're investing in short-term rentals, we're not going to have that sort of constant income and performance that maybe a long-term rental would have, right? You sign a 1-year lease, you get, $1,000 a month. That's pretty constant. Now, especially in seasonal markets, things are going to change, right? So I would like to know how my revenue will be impacted by those seasonal changes. So this market history section is really useful, gives you a really good overview of month by month how your different KPIs should look, or they have looked in this market. You can download all of this information. So if you're an investor that really likes to play with spreadsheets, you can download pretty much everything on this report. Another section that I really like is the supply and demand chart. So if I go ahead and click show graphs, you're going to see pretty much like I like to make I like to say that this is similar to like the health of the market in a way. And especially like in 2020 and 2021, when we were seeing this huge boom in Airbnbs, this was a really important graph to look at because it tells you essentially how stable the market is. We're showing you the average number of bookings per listing and also the number of active listings in the market. So again, sort of like supply, which is your active listings, and the demand, the number of bookings that are coming in. So you'll see in most markets that there is a steady increase. It looks like we started in January with about 400, or January of 2023 with about 407 active listings. We're now up to about 444 in this comp set. So that can give you a pretty good idea of sort of like how the listing or how the market is growing over time. If you're seeing a really, really drastic increase, that might be like a sign like maybe I shouldn't necessarily or I should have caution when I'm investing in this market because, there is a lot of interest here. There are a lot of new listings. So some of the demand that we're seeing might be spread over more listings than it has in the past. And that's why we want to look at this average bookings per listing chart. Now, of course, keep in mind, there are seasonal changes that are going to affect this chart, right? Regardless of the sort of supply in the market, here in Charleston, we're going to see less bookings coming in our off season than during our high season. So do keep that in mind. But essentially what this chart is showing you is, say we have 100 listings in the market, and on any given week, 100 bookings come in. That will be one average booking per listing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that every single listing is getting a booking, but there are potentially enough bookings to go around. So ideally, you want to see, around one or above. But of course, that's not necessarily possible in all markets. The main thing is you don't want to see this number just going down, sort of opposite to the number of active listings going up. So, of course, some of these other things will be helpful when you are an investor. One other thing I like to point out, and again, this is really useful for really anybody, whether you are an investor or a new property manager or a um, operating property manager, is this export PDF. So you can generate this PDF. It'll give you all of these charts in a really nice format. You can then send this, if you're working with partners, if you're working with new people that might want to sign on to your property management program, you can send this to them and show that you are an expert in the market and you have all the data at your back when you're making decisions. So super useful there. Something else to keep in mind is you can white label, or we do white label it. So if you upload your company's logo under your settings, this will be basically branded with your brand, which is really nice. Awesome. Looks like we don't have any questions. So we'll move on for now. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about new property managers and new owners. So let's dive back in. So a new property manager or a new owner is at a little bit of a disadvantage than those that have been operating in the market for a long time, right? Those who have been in their market for, a year, 5 years, 10 years, they know the market really well. They have a ton of data just from their own experience. But if you are just getting started, you are probably going to need to supplement the data that you have with what's going on in the market. So that's where market dashboards really comes in to help. So a couple of things that, of course, the comp set is definitely helpful. Looking at this market history can be helpful. But I do also like to look at, I'll scroll down almost all the way to the end. And we're going to look at the amenities section. So as you're setting up your new listings, this is a really interesting section to reference. Essentially, we're showing you the common amenities in a market as well as the desired amenities in the market. So we'll start with common amenities. There's two lines here, two bars that are basically showing you the relationship between the percentage of occurrence of a amenity in the market versus the percentage of bookings for listings with that amenity. So you'll notice that air conditioning, very common in New Orleans. It can get really hot down there. Looks like about 99.1% of listings have air conditioning mentioned as an amenity on Airbnb. 99.27% of bookings that have come in the past 30 days are for listings with that amenity. So if you have a listing in New Orleans, definitely make sure that you are checking that air conditioning box because it's something that's very common in your market and it's definitely something that people are looking for when they are booking. Now, sometimes you will see things like dishes or iron or coffee maker or hair dryer. Now, that does not necessarily mean that people are searching for hair dryer when they are booking on Airbnb. This can mean that there are a lot of professional hosts in this market that know that they need to check every single box in order to show up in the OTA's search results. So make sure that you're looking here. Make sure that if you do have a hair dryer, even if you didn't think it was important to check that box, it is, at least in this market. So really important to reference this when you're setting your listings up. Now, just below here, we're also going to see desired amenities. Now, this is a little bit different. So this is going to show you the difference between that percentage of occurrence in bookings versus the percentage of occurrence in listings. So for example, bed linens looks, and here, I'll actually add one here. And you can also search any amenity that you want. Now, I usually use hot tub as one. I have a feeling there probably won't be a lot of hot tubs in New Orleans. A little sticky down there for that, but we'll see what that comes up with. Beautiful. So here we have in this common amenities chart, you'll see that 6.76% of bookings that have come in the past 30 days are for listings with hot tubs, but only 6.52% of listings have hot tubs. Now, if I come down to this desired amenity chart, it's essentially showing you that difference. It's a 0.24% difference between the desire or the bookings and the occurrence. So it just gives you kind of an idea of maybe there are things that are desired by people who are booking, but these aren't necessarily amenities that everybody is checking the boxes for. So again, if you have any of these desired amenities, you also want to make sure that those are also selected on the OTAs so that people who are searching for them can show up or can find your listings. So I do see a question. What if something like AC is 50/50? So if you live in the north and a ski resort, you don't necessarily need air conditioning at, in January, but maybe you definitely need it in July. Great question. Keep in mind, these are showing bookings for the past 30 days. So these charts will potentially change throughout the year. So if you're coming into your summer season, you might see air conditioning show up on these charts. But if you're going into your winter season when it's really cold, air conditioning might not be on here. Awesome. So the next part I would look at, and again, this doesn't have to just be for new property managers. This is also, I would say, if you are an operating manager, this is one that you should definitely look at. This is our policies and fees section. So um, things like weekly discount, monthly discount, and cleaning fees, really important to pay attention to these when you're setting up your listings or even just as you're operating throughout the year. Cleaning fees, especially, there's been a lot of talk about sort of junk fees in regards to short-term rentals as well as other industries. So it's really important that you're not charging way too much, right? You're not charging too much, especially if you're going into an off season when your ADR might be really low. But if you have a really high cleaning fee, it's actually going to make you not really competitive with other listings around you. So, how to read this chart? Basically, the same thing as before. We're seeing the dark bar is the percentage of listings in the market with that category of fee. And then the light pink is the percentage of bookings that are coming in for that category. Now, I think this is a pretty good chart to sort of explain what I was saying before, right? So you'll see for a cleaning fee of 91 to 120, 9% of listings are actually, and their base price is around 310 or their ADR is around 310. They are listing with a fee between 91 and 120, and then 10% of the booking, so just slightly higher than the percentage of listings, um, are actually going for these listings with this 91 to $120 fee. So this is saying that if you have a listing with a cleaning fee in this range, you're potentially more likely to get bookings because these ones have a little bit more demand. Same thing if we move to the next category, 121 to 150, looks like 29.9% of bookings are happening for this type of listing. And then 29.25% of listings actually have this category of cleaning fee. So it's a little bit smaller of a gap. But then if we go up to the next one, we're actually going to see that it flips. 17.46% of listings have a cleaning fee of 151 to 180, but only 16.98% of bookings. And then that gap gets a little bit further as we move forward. So if I were in this market, I would probably try to have a cleaning fee of under 150 because that seems to be like where most of the people that are booking are choosing those listings based off of. Hopefully that makes sense. Same thing with cancellation policies. If you are trying to figure out what cancellation policy makes sense for your market, a lot of times you'll hear people say, go with the most flexible one possible. You're going to get more bookings. But if you're in a market where you actually have a lot of other people with stricter cancellation policies, you don't necessarily need to go super flexible in order to stay competitive. So this is a really nice chart to reference there. And then same thing as you're setting up weekly or monthly discounts. You don't necessarily, if I were to do a 40% weekly discount, I would be the only one in my market that has that high of a discount. Maybe that would set me apart, but maybe that's going to make my rates too low and I don't actually need to offer that high of a fee. Hopefully that makes sense. So the last thing I want to show you, and again, this isn't just for new um, new operators, but this is also extremely useful if you are operating in the market, is how to view your comp sets within other parts of our tool. So I'll hop in here quickly. So I'm going to go to portfolio analytics and pacing reports. And if you have more questions about portfolio analytics, please do join us again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. Now, what's nice about these charts, so this section is pacing, and essentially it's showing you your performance this year compared to same time last year. So as of March 6th, what did my calendars look like? Was I really fully occupied? Do I need to worry that I don't have any bookings in June yet? Or did I get my bookings in June later in the year last year? Now, if you are a brand new operator, you might not have that data. You might not know when you're supposed to be getting bookings for June. So again, you can use your comp sets to supplement and sort of learn a little bit more about the market. Now, this will hopefully load a little bit faster than it is. I guess while it's doing its thing, I will open up another page and show you where else. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Um, this one. While that's loading, another place that you can view the comp sets is going to be on our main pricing dashboard. So again, I went to dynamic pricing, pricing dashboard, and I just opened up one of my listings. Now, maybe Rio's Retreat is like a very unique listing. It's oceanfront, it's got the best view, it's got a pool, it's got all these great things. And PriceLabs, when we're looking at neighborhood data, we're going to show you the information for listings that are powering our algorithm. So typically that's the 350 closest listings to you. But if I want to be more specific and I want to say, hey, this is a 3 bedroom that's pet friendly and good reviews, and I want to handpick my comps, I can, by default, it'll show you sort of this nearby listings. But I can then go, let me look at my market dashboard that I just created. I'll look at New Orleans because we just were looking at this one. Now, this is going to be a little bit funny because it's a different market than where this listing is located. And then I'm going to add my 3 and 4 bedroom comp set. And then all of the data here, so all of course, the black line is my pricing, but the market data, so the pinks and gray color in the background, as well as the occupancy data, that's all going to be pulling from those listings that I've handpicked. So again, if I want to be very specific when I'm comparing my prices to the market in this neighborhood data section, I can be as specific as I want and create those comp sets, pull them in from market dashboards. Now, hopefully this is loaded. Yes, it has. Beautiful. Now, these pacing charts, again, they're going to show you your performance against yourself same time last year. So in this case, if I'm looking at my occupancy, um, and I'm looking at this April 8th week, for example, last year, I didn't really have a lot of occupancy. I was if we're looking at the dotted line, my occupancy was at 26.67% as of March 6th, whereas this year, I'm already booked at almost 60%, 59.8%, it looks like. So we're doing really good. So this essentially can tell you maybe which dates I might want to focus on, right? I've got lower occupancy the week before, so maybe I need to go in and lower my prices for that week or various, you can do various things to sort of boost your performance. And we'll get more into that in our portfolio analytics webinar tomorrow. But if you don't have that data from last year, Market Dashboards is a really great resource. Oops, and it looks like this is embarrassing, but none of my market dashboards are available. Okay, well, normally these would all say subscribed, and we would have another couple of lines added to these. So you could actually see how the market is pacing against how you're pacing, right? So maybe the entire market, right? You might not have this last year today line, but you can see that the market was doing better on this date last year, and this year it's not. So you can then sort of extrapolate, okay, well, maybe the market's a little bit softer this year. I should go in and pay a little bit more attention to these dates. Or these dates are booking up much faster in the market than they were last year. Maybe I should go in and make sure that maybe I have a longer minimum stay, or I've raised my prices a little bit. PriceLabs should be doing that for you already, but it can help you sort of key in on specific dates that you might need to focus on. And I'm sorry that that didn't work. I should have, yeah, that's sort of odd. But cool. Next, and if y'all want to see that more, I will have it working by tomorrow, or we can stay on a little bit longer and find an account that we can view. Awesome. So next we want to talk a little bit about operating property managers and owners. So you have all the data, maybe you've been doing this for years, but how are you going to use market dashboards to take your revenue management strategies up to the next level? So hopping back into our dashboard, beautiful. I'd like to have you scroll down and we're going to look at our length of stay and pricing charts. Perfect. So here we are. So this is our first length of stay by stay date chart. I can select dates by clicking here. I can look at specifically bookings that have been made in the past couple of windows. I'm going to choose max though for now. And I can also, instead of selecting dates, I can just zoom all the way out and see historically what the what the market has been doing over time. So the first thing that I like to use this graph for is understanding the demand for different lengths of stay on key dates. So let's take New Year's, for example. New Year's, I can just hover over December 31st and I can see the number of bookings for each length of stay. So we have 19 one-day bookings, we had 89 2-day, 184 3 and 4-day, 73 5 and 6-day, and 33 7 to 14. Now, it's March, so I might try to get some of those longer bookings, right? If I have a minimum stay of 1 or 2 nights for New Year's, it'll probably get booked, but I'm going to be missing out on those longer lengths of stay. So I might currently, at this time, put even a 7 night or a 5 night minimum for this date. You can do that for really any events, any holidays that are happening in your market. You can go all the way back and see how that has changed compared to the previous year. The other thing that you can do is more forward looking. So let's look at 7 days, 14 days, and 30 days. So now we're looking in the future. Now, for all the bookings that have been made in the past day, I can kind of see what the average booking has been. So it looks like I'm seeing a lot of that like light peach color. So I'm going to say that most of these bookings are 3 and 4 night stays that have come in the past week. I can see how that sort of changes over time with 14 nights as well as 30 nights. Even seeing a couple of midterm, so sort of darker gray colors come in here as well. It looks like we're even having a couple of bookings for next year. If I had to guess, I'd say that might be Mardi Gras next year, that we're seeing some bookings coming in for. Now, the second chart is a little bit more advanced, especially once we add more data to it. But I really, really love this chart because it gives you an idea where this was kind of generally you could sort of eye what types of lists or what types of bookings are coming in. This will really break it down in a nice, easy way to understand. So by default, we're going to show you booked nights. I personally like looking at number of bookings, but really it is up to you. So essentially, this is showing me two charts. We've got booking window and length of stay. We have a couple of different categories for each, and then we're going to show you the number of bookings for each of these categories along the y-axis. So in this case, if we're looking at booking window, most of the bookings in the past 30 days have come in with a 1 to 2 month booking window, so like a 30 to 60-day window. Now we're also, just like I sort of mentioned here, we're also seeing in the past 30 days, most of the bookings that have come in for any time in the future are 3 and 4 night bookings. So definitely a huge preference for 3 and 4 night stays here. Now, if I want to get a little bit more detail, I can change this to bookings by LOS and booking window. So now we're basically overlaying the data from both of the charts on each other. So if I look at this 1 to 2 month uh, sort of column here, you'll now be able to see that of those, couple hundred bookings that came in during that or for that booking window, you can now see how they're categorized by length of stay. So, of the bookings that came in for a 1 to 2 month booking window, 303 of those were 3 to 4 night bookings. Now, this correlates, this is matches this chart here because if we come over to this 3 and 4 night booking um, column, you'll see that 303 of the 3 and 4 night stays that came in over the past 30 days are for that 1 to 2 month window. See how those two numbers sort of they match each other? So essentially, this is really helpful when you're setting up your minimum stay strategy, right? I don't want to have a 2 night minimum, even though we do have 2 night bookings coming in 2 to 4 months in advance, 1 to 2 months in advance. At that point, the majority of bookings are going to be over 3 nights. So I should definitely have a 3 or 4 night minimum for these timeframes. Again, I can book 1 night stays, I can book 2 night stays, but why would I want to? I could get a higher value booking for that time because there's definitely demand for those. Now, one thing that's nice is if you are looking at these charts and you are going cross-eyed, it is okay. These are really nice to, have a little bit of a sanity check on, but we did make it a little bit easier for you. So if you are using our dynamic pricing tools, you can at the listing level click edit and see our minimum stay suggestions. Now, these suggestions are coming directly from that data. We're analyzing the bookings that have come into your market over the past year, and we're saying this is the recommended minimum stay setting. So here we're saying this listing should normally have a 4 night minimum, but we're going to make some exceptions for last minute bookings, orphan days, and we're also going to raise your minimum far out because we're seeing that there is demand there. We will also show you that your minimum stay might want to change throughout different times of year. I believe this listing is here in South Carolina. Not a lot of people are visiting us November through January. So we're saying let's be a little bit lax on those minimum stay rules during that time. Beautiful. So we have about 5 minutes left. I've pretty much covered most of what we need to cover today. If you all have any questions, I'd be more than happy to stick around for a couple minutes to show you or help answer anything that you all still might be unsure of. Of course, if you have any questions after this, you're like, darn, I wish I'd asked Becca that. Feel free to reach out to us at support@pricelabs.co. You can also reach out to our team using this handy little chat bubble in the lower right hand corner. You can either chat us or email us directly from your account. We also have a ton of help articles. So you can just say, hey, what did Becca say about market dashboards? And you will see all of these great help articles pop up right here, along with videos, things like that. But cool. I see that we do have one question asking if we can remove the PriceLabs branding when converting it to PMS. Um, I don't believe that's currently an option just because we are sort of citing where the data comes from. But you can always use like a whiteout tool online. I won't tell anybody if you want to keep us a secret. But I believe just because we do want, to cite or you would maybe want to cite your sources, that's why PriceLabs is included as, I think we put it as like powered by PriceLabs on the reports themselves. Beautiful. Are there other questions? If not, we will Any way to find comp set pet fees? Honestly, we don't actually have pet fees as one of the listed fees, but I really like that option. So let me, we'll ask our product team to see if they can evaluate that. I think that's a really useful set of information though. So we'll ask our product team about that. Thanks, Fred. Cool. So I think that's about it. Thank you all so much for your time today. Again, please do join us. Hopefully, we'll see some of you tomorrow for portfolio analytics and or any other updates that we have coming out. Have a great one, y'all. Thanks so much.